Hello and welcome to our Aussies Abroad news wrap, where we whip around the headlines and get you up to speed with Aussies doing amazing things all over the world. Welcome to you, Corey McKernan. Our weekend's just got a whole lot busier with a whole heap more new sport coming online.
It has, Jason. Now we can add Matty Ryan in the Premier League, NFL and college football to our weekly schedule. But you know what? Thank goodness have we got something that keeps us on track. We've got sports here where we can plan it right and you can add it to your digital calendar. It is a lifesaver at the moment, Chase.
Yeah, it is, but we're trying to get our schedules worked out. It's a fantastic system. It allows us to pre-program what's coming up in advance by all sorts of different types of filters, so you can follow whatever sport you want, whatever teams you need to follow, whatever sports. It tells you what's on and where we're using it. It's a great system. I know a lot of, Corey, actually a lot of licensed venues and sports bars and things are using it to program their big screens, because they've got the same problem as us. There's sport going on all over the world, and they want to make sure they have the best things on the screens at the right times of the day and the week. So we're using it. Look, if you're interested in it, it's sportsyear.com.au. They're mates of ours. They're fantastic people. They've got a great product. So thank you to Sportsyear helping us get on track. You mentioned NFL and college football. Excited this week, actually. Our special feature this week is with two of the most influential Australian figures in that space.
Yes, well, Darren Bennett, he is considered the godfather of Australian punting all those years ago when he came from Melbourne and went over to the San Diego Chargers. He really opened the door for Aussie punters, and he was the NFL punter of the 90s. And our old mate Nathan Chapman, well, he's at the forefront of the Aussie wave of the last decade with ProKick Australia that just keep on delivering so many Aussie athletes overseas and giving them opportunities in America.
Yeah, it's been fantastic to sit down and chat at length with both Darren Bennett and Nathan Chapman for this week's special, to talk about punting, to talk about the journey, where it's come from, where it's going, the current landscape, Australia making such great inroads in that space. So that's available coming out this week, our special Aussies Abroad American football feature. You can catch it, watch it online at our YouTube channel, which you can access via aussiesabroad.tv. And of course, it's out as a podcast as well, so you can listen to it wherever you listen to your favourite podcasts. Lots to get into with this week's news wrap, Corey, and it's not often we start with a crowning of a new world champion, but that's where we're going to begin our motorsport wrap and also our Aussies Abroad of the week. Well, what a weekend of action it was at Mugello in Italy. Formulas 1, 2 and 3, all first-timers on this track. The only reason this track's being used is because of COVID. They've condensed the entire seasons into Europe. So a track that's normally used mainly for motorcycle racing is being used for Formula 1, and it made for a fantastic weekend of action. Let's start with Formula 3, and Melbourne's Oscar Piastri ended the weekend, the final weekend of the season, squarely in the championship hunt. He was in a six-way scrap with 2 races to run. He started race 1 in 16th position. He worked his way up to 11th, finished just outside the points. His teammate Logan Sargent actually joined him for a share of the title lead, so it all came down to Sunday's race. Oscar started 11th. Sargent started 5th, so had the advantage, but Sargent taken out on the very first lap. He was out of the race. So suddenly for Oscar, it was a case of just keeping it clean, being smart, being mature, and getting to the finish line. However, the drama didn't end there. The other contender for the title, Porte, started flying up through the field. He had to be aggressive. He needed to get to the front, first or second, really, to put the pressure on to get enough points to steal the world title from Oscar. To Oscar's credit, he kept his nerve, he kept his composure, he did what he had to do, and in the end, made a couple of passes on his own to scrape through and win the World Championship in an absolute nail-biter. It was thrilling to watch.
So, Jace, he's a 19-year-old from Melbourne, which is amazing. But what does this F3 title mean in the overall scheme of things?
Yeah, Corey, it means plenty. Look, F3 has been a traditional feeder ground for Formula 1 for many, many years, and that's his ultimate objective. He's managed by former Australian Formula 1 great Mark Webber, who's been guiding him through the lower classes to try and get him up into Formula 1 in the coming years. And look, he's already in Renault's Young Driver Academy, which is Renault's feeder program, and they'll really be impressed with what they've seen from Oscar. Not just winning the championship, of course, which is impressive enough, but the way he went about it, particularly on the weekend, 19 years of age, he could have panicked when he found that Porte was starting to rise through the field. He could have tried to be a little bit more aggressive, taken a few risks and potentially taken himself out. he drove a really mature, composed race, which for a 19-year-old was really impressive. So that will have caught the eye of Renault. Of course, the other thing to remember with Renault is that Fernando Alonso is stepping back into their team next year. He's actually stepping into Dan Ricciardo's seat, Dan moving on to McLaren. But Fernando's 39 years of age, so he's a short-term solution. Maybe 2 or 3 years in Formula One, you would think, at the most. So that really sets an opportunity up for Oscar, if he continues to go really well in the lower categories, to maybe step into that Alonso seat in the years ahead. So massive stepping stone for Oscar Piastri. Congratulations to him, Australia's newest world champion.
What about Formula One, Jace? What about our own Dan Ricciardo? How did he fare at Mugello?
Yeah, he actually had a really good weekend, so close to his first ever podium with Renault. It was an absolutely chaotic race. There were 2 red flag restarts in the race itself. So 3 standing starts. Well, the second one was actually a rolling start, and it caused absolute chaos. There was a concertina at the back of the field. Dan did really well. He started 8th. He worked his way up to 3rd with about 15 laps to go. And he was actually sitting in perfect position to get a podium. The 2 Mercedes were off in the distance, but their tyres were starting to fade. There was no one really coming at Dan from behind, and he looked to be comfortably heading towards a podium until Lance Stroll lost what looked to be his left rear. He crashed, set up another red flag restart. Dan actually got up to second past Bottas, was never going to have the speed to hold him off. But Bottas got back to second place. Then, unfortunately, Alex Albon also had the speed to go past Dan, so Dan finished 4th. But all in all, a pretty good weekend for Dan. Certainly one of the best weekends he's had since he's been at Renault. And speaking of fantastic performances, Will Power back on the winners list on Saturday. The race at Mid-Ohio was interesting, Corey. He said that they just threw their fuel strategy and their tyre strategy and everything out the window and just said, you know what, we've had such a tough year. He hasn't won for over 12 months. We've had such a tough and frustrating year. We're just going to go for it. We're just going to go as hard as we can, and it worked. His 29th road course career victory and his first win in just over 12 months.
It did, Jason. I think he threw caution to the wind, even picking up that little bit that I saw on Will Power. But what about our 2-wheelers? How did they go over the weekend?
Well, the action was at Misano in Italy. Remy Gardner was actually starting from pole in the Moto2 GP race. Unfortunately for Remy, as he was going around on the warm-up lap, actually hit a bump, and his rev limiter, I think, kicked in at exactly the same time, and it just high-sided him, just flipped him straight over the top of the bike. It was a huge high side, and unfortunately landed really heavily. He broke his thumb and 3 fractures in his foot, so he didn't actually get to race. He's going in to have surgery in Barcelona this week. Look, he's hopeful. These guys are tough and crazy, as we've talked before. He's hopeful of actually trying to get up and race this weekend. Let's see. We'll see if that happens. But really disappointing for Remy, because the signs he's been showing in the back half of the season, he's got the raw speed. It's now just a case of putting the entire package together, and hopefully that just comes with a little bit more experience and maturity. Meanwhile, in the MotoGP, Aussie Jack Miller was sitting potentially in podium position early in his race. He was up to 3rd before the tyres started to fade about 5 or 6 laps into the race. He knew he was in trouble, so he had to, from there, ride a defensive race. In the end, he slipped back to 8th. They're back at Misano this weekend, so they're going to spend this week tinkering with the bike. It's not really a track that suits their setup, but they're going to see if they can wring a little bit more out of it this weekend. Let's stay on 2 wheels now. It's time to welcome in our Aussies Abroad cycling expert, Matt Keenan, who's been doing a fantastic job each and every night on SBS's coverage of the Tour de France. Matty, welcome.
Thanks, Jason. It's been a pretty exciting tour, and we're just getting to the business end and the really good part.
Yeah, and last week, we got together last week, we were talking about Richie Porte and how he's just flying under the radar, but you were really impressed with just his form and his shape and his style, and he was looking good, and he's continued to impress, hasn't he?
Yeah, that radar has gone from a distant beep, beep to a really big beep, beep right near the centre, and the guys in yellow and second place, they are really paying attention to Richie. He's currently in 6th position overall. He's 39 seconds off 3rd place, and he's a little over 2 minutes behind the race leader, which is Primož Roglic. I think Richie is the 3rd strongest rider in this race. He can move up to the podium. The top 2, which is Primož Roglic and Tadej Pogačar, I think they're just a bit stronger than everybody else, and I do believe that they'll battle it out for the win. And I'm convinced that Richie is the 3rd strongest, and he could become the 2nd Aussie to reach the podium, which is a significant achievement.
And given the uncertainty around what the last week or so of the event is going to look like, you just never know. If you put yourself there and thereabouts, you're just never sure what's going to happen.
No one thought Stephen Bradbury was going to win that gold medal at the Winter Olympics. But it's, you know, even taking that out, you've got to put yourself in that position. And one of the guys in the top 2, 2nd place overall, Tadej Pogačar, it's his first Tour de France. He's 21 years of age. So will he have a really bad day in the 3rd week? We've seen him ride a 3-week race last year in the Tour of Spain, and he didn't. He got better in the 3rd week. So he's got some form across 3 weeks, but he's never been in this situation. He's never been in the Tour with really the full world of cycling paying attention to him. Primož Roglic, he's the race leader. He has won a 3-week race in the past. He won that Tour of Spain last year, but you never know. He could have a crash on one of the descents. Richie, if he's good enough for 3rd, which I believe he is, he's still in the mix for the win. Albeit an outsider, he is still in the mix.
Caleb Ewan pre-race was saying, look, if he could win 3 stages, that would be a fantastic performance. Well, he's won 2. Can he pinch another?
Yeah, but he's going to have to wait until next Sunday in Paris. There's only one more stage for the sprinters, and Caleb is the favourite for it. His biggest challenge, Jason, is getting there. So just making it inside the time, what we call the time delay. You have to finish each stage within a certain percentage of what the stage winner finishes the stage within. And they give that a varying degree of percentage depending on how hard they classify the stage. So in the mountain stages, sometimes you get up to 45 or so minutes. But that is easier than it sounds. And we saw yesterday, Caleb got in with 5 minutes to spare. But he was within himself and trying to save energy. So he just needs to get through, and he'll be the favourite to win in Paris, as he did last year.
So it's just a holding pattern for him, which takes, I guess, great mental toughness to be doing that for a week, 10 days, knowing full well that it's just about survival.
Yeah, so we talk about his teammates a lot in the sprint stages and what wonderful work they do, leading him out, getting him into position. If we could have a camera at the end, waiting for half an hour or 40 minutes for Caleb to come across the finish line, you see the less glamorous job that they do because they're all still there with him and they're trying to get him to the finish line, and they have him use less energy on these days than what they use. So he's then got more energy on the day where he's in a position to win. It's those accumulative effects that just build up little bits of energy saved that can put him in a position where he can raise his arms on one of the stages that suits him.
Weekly COVID tests taking place around the rest day. So another round of testing this weekend just passed. Last week, 4 staff sent home. So I guess everyone at the moment is just holding their breath.
They are. So what the scenario is, 2 positive tests and the whole team goes home. And that could be a mechanic and a masseuse. It could be a mechanic and a rider. It could be team management and a chef. Just has to be 2 within that team's bubble. But what they have done is, because it's been so long since the previous positives, and there was 4 teams with a positive, none of them were riders, they now all start from 0. So everybody's in the same position. One of the big pieces of news, I'm sure you saw it, Jason, was last week, the actual race director, Christian Prudhomme. So the head of the race, he tested positive to coronavirus and he had to go home. So he's like the rest of us and watching his event on TV.
It doesn't differentiate by pay scale, does it?
No, that's exactly right. It doesn't discriminate.
Yeah. Looking ahead to what's ahead for the next week or so, the race for the green jersey still on?
Yeah, that's really interesting. This has been the most interesting race we've seen in the green jersey since Peter Sagan started riding the Tour de France, because he's just dominated this event. Every time he started the Tour, he's won that race. He's won the race for green, with the exception of the one year where he got kicked out because he was involved in a crash with Mark Cavendish. And he's won it easily. Now he's been seriously challenged by a guy that used to be on his team, the underdog Irishman Sam Bennett, who couldn't get a start in the Tour because he was on Peter Sagan's team. So Peter is really motivated to go, okay, team, you made the right decision by choosing me over Sam. I think Sam Bennett is the favourite if he can make it to the finish each day. He's in the same position as Caleb. He's got to get through to the finish. He's riding his first Tour. Can he make it up the mountains? We'll find out soon. We know Peter can, because he's won the green jersey so often by being better than the other sprinters through the mountains. That battle is not over, and I'm really glad we've got some tension in that one.
You can catch Matty each and every night on SBS's Tour de France coverage. Mate, thanks for your time as always. Looking forward to catching up with you again next week.
Thanks, Jason.
Another busy weekend for our Aussie golfers around the globe. Corey, what do you got?
Yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag, Chase. Look at the Safeway Open. Look, Cam Percy looked like he was finally going to maybe break through for his maiden win on the US Tour. But look, he had 3 decent rounds, but he faded badly in the final round. He finished tied for 23rd after a closing round, 74. Cam Davis was pretty solid. He finished in a tie for 36. And we go over to the Seniors Tour and the Sanford International. Well, Rod Pampling, he lit it up on Saturday at 63, but he couldn't make a charge, finishing tied for 17th behind the winner in Jimenez. Go over the European Tour. Well, Jason Scrivener, he's had a pretty solid year. He finished tied for 8th. He moved up another 13 places in the race for Dubai. And then the girls, well, we look like going into the weekend, we look like we're actually going to be pretty good. Minjee Lee, well, she finished like a train. She finished 9 under. Catherine Kirk, she was a little bit disappointing in the end. She finished on 9 under also. But Gabby Ruffles, another solid performance as an amateur, finished tied for 15th at 7 under. Then go over to the Corn Ferry. Well, Brett Druitt, he continued on his very good form after his win. He finished 16th and he solidified his position in that top 25. And then Curtis Luck, well, he's had a bit of luck. Even though he missed the cut, he went back into the top 25 for the players that will secure their tour cards.
So lots there to digest, and to help us do that is our Aussies Abroad golf correspondent, Luke Alvey, who joins us from Canada. Luke, thanks for your time.
Pleasure, Jason. Yeah, real shame for a couple of the Aussies in contention on the weekend. Probably feeling for Cam Percy a bit now at 47. He's desperate to get a win, but really battled there on that final Sunday. For Catherine Kirk, it was a bit the same. You know, very experienced player out there. She's been playing nicely. Just didn't have the ball rolling in her direction. Great finish by Minjee Lee, both of them getting a top 10. And I was so impressed by Gabby Ruffles. What a performance. As an amateur, to be right in the thick of it for all 4 days shows that she's going to be a star of the future. All
eyes in the golf world now turn to Wingfoot, the US Open this week.
Oh, it's going to be awesome, isn't it? It feels weird that we're playing a US Open in September, but here we are. You know, we've got 9 Australians in the field, which is fantastic. It's a big contingent. It's headed by our stars, to be fair. Adam Scott, Jason Day, Cam Smith, I would say, would be the pick of our chances. You'd put Mark Leishman in there typically, but it's just been a real struggle for Leish since the restart of golf. But no, the person I'm probably the most bullish on is Jason Day. Tied for 5th, top 5 finish there in the PGA. He's got an astounding record at the US Open without winning one. A couple of runner-ups, 3 other top 10s, and he's played quite nicely this summer in the US.
And look, it's going to be pretty interesting. Usually with the US Open, we're playing in June and when the conditions are in the middle of summer. What's the feeling over there as far as how the course will actually play? Because obviously, I mean, we're playing in the back end of September, so conditions will be vastly different.
Yeah, in a way, but they've set Wingfoot up like they like to set up Wingfoot. It is lush. The rough is very deep. I mean, this is probably the most challenging US Open venue. I say probably only to show places like Shinnecock Hills a little bit of respect, but this is the one that really puts the pros right back in their place, and it's a grind fest. And of course, Jeff Ogilvy won there in 06 when Mickelson had his meltdown on the final hole and blew his chance to win. There's a number of others that were right in the thick as well. But the biggest thing that Jeff Ogilvy said at the end of it is because they make the rough so penal there, it actually makes the golf course play more to the strengths of those who are really good from 100 yards and in. So I'd like the chances of Cam Smith as well for Australia, who has a phenomenal wedge game, nice short game as well. Do I think one of our Australians will win it, given the likes of the form Dustin Johnson's in, or let's say John Rahm, Justin Thomas, even the likes of Xander Schauffele and Colin Morikawa? Probably not. But I think we've got a good chance of a couple of those guys sneaking in there around that top 10 and perhaps having a genuine crack.
It is a healthy contingent, as you mentioned, Luke, so it's a great opportunity for some of the lesser names in Australian golf to put up a really good result this week.
Absolutely, or just perhaps being in the field. Curtis Luck, via that victory on the Nationwide Tour in that finals playoffs, he's in the field. In fact, he played a lot of golf with Lucas Michelle growing up in Perth. This fella won the US Mid-Amateur last year, and he's had to wait all this time to get to play in the US Open, so it's pretty cool for him. I'm really excited about Lucas Herbert. We know at the start of the year he had that wonderful win in Dubai. He's got great belief, a really good game. One day he'll be a real threat in majors. And then Matty Jones, the reigning Australian Open champion, who's played in 4 of these before without making the cut. He and Scotty Hend, it depends on what game they bring to the table that week. But it's good to have 9 Australians in the field, plenty to cheer for.
Mate, we look forward to it. Thanks for your time. It's great to have your eyes and Corey's eyes across it. You'll be watching every shot across the 4 days. We look forward to your thoughts and insights next week on Aussies Abroad.
Thank you, Jason and Corey. It's going to be a strange week not calling it for the first time in 5 years, but it'll be a joy to watch regardless.
to the World Game now, Corey, and we've got dozens of Aussies in leagues all over Europe, which is fantastic to see. We'll start with the women.
Yeah, we have, Jason. Look, Sam Kerr, after a bit of a mixed start in the pre-season, hasn't she lit it up the last few weeks? She scored last week against Manchester United in the opener. She continued on her great form against Bristol City after Chelsea gave them a 9-0 thrashing. That is a good old-fashioned shellacking.
Yeah, it was a tough outing for Bristol City and their two Aussies, Chloe Lagazzo and Ella Mastrantonio. They both played the full 90 minutes for Bristol. And speaking of smackings, at the moment what we're seeing in the FA Super League, Corey, as things start to shake out, is there's a real pecking order right now. There was another hammering. It was a 9-1 win from Arsenal over West Ham. Arsenal full of Aussies, of course. It was a great birthday for their women's coach, Joe Montemuro, who saw the side take that 9-1 win. Fellow Aussie Caitlin Ford with the Gunners. She scored the 9th goal for them and her first for the club. Steph Catley, however, copped a knock in her back at about 12 minutes in. She had to be substituted out in the 20th, so a little bit disappointing for her. Hopefully she's okay and gets up for next week. Meanwhile, at Everton, Hayley Razzo had a fantastic weekend. She was awarded Player of the Match honours for the Toffees, and she continues to show just why she was such a star signing, looking really damaging on the wing for them. And still in England, great start for our Gold Coast native, Lyndon Dykes, who unfortunately has decided to play for Scotland, but he slotted a penalty on debut for Queen's Park Rangers. He helped guide the Hoops to a 2-0 win over Nottingham Forest, and he's really looking to settle in nicely since he's left the Scottish Premier League.
Which is where we turn our attention to next, and Socerroos gun Martin Boyle scoring a stunning header from a congested corner in the 59th minute for Hibernian in their 3-0 win over St Mirren over the weekend. Great news out of Germany with emerging Socceroo John Eider making a successful return to professional football for German side Wolfsburg overnight. The second division striker had been sidelined for 11 months with a foot injury and scored a goal on return.
Meanwhile, in the Premier League, it was a tough day at the office to start the new campaign for Matt Ryan. He conceded a penalty in the first half as Brighton fell 3-1 to Chelsea. And we're going to stick with the World Game for this week's Have a Gander at, where we like to look at things that maybe are just not quite getting the attention they deserve. And this week it's one of Australia's youngsters, young up-and-comers. It's 19-year-old Indiah-Paige Riley. She's in the Young Matilda squad. She's actually represented Australia at under-19 level, and she scored a hat-trick for one of Europe's best development clubs. It's the Danish champions, Fortuna Hjorring. Now, she only recently signed a 3-year deal for them. She came off the bench, Corey, in the 50-something minute and scored a hat-trick. Now, I know a hat-trick itself is pretty impressive, but there can't be too many of those that have been done when you've been sitting on the bench for 50 minutes and you still managed to get on and kick 3. That's unbelievable.
The only one I know that's ever done that, Jace, was Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, where he came on and kicked 4 goals for Man United. So to kick 3 goals after coming on is a pretty special effort.
Yeah, so Indiah-Paige Riley, certainly worth having a gander at. We'll be keeping a keen eye on her performances and development over the next few years as she builds up to hopefully breaking her way into that senior Matilda squad. Corey, let's talk American football now, and an unforgettable weekend for a bunch of young Aussies who are making their debut in college football, and there was a few getting around in the NFL as well.
Yeah, Jason, isn't it great? The footy's finally back, and we did have a number of Aussies that were in action. We had big Adam Gotsis. I'll get it in, he's a Kangaroo supporter, so I do love the man. Though I don't like what he did to my Indianapolis Colts on the weekend. He now plays for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they beat the Colts 27-20. Then we had Jordan Mailata. Well, isn't he a great story? He actually came on the field after their right tackle, Jack Driscoll, went down. But unfortunately, the Eagles lost 27-17. And then our punt guys, we had Mitch Wisnowski. He took part in the 49ers loss to the Cardinals 24-20. Cam Johnson, he was actually really good. He had 5 punts for the Eagles with the 53.6-yard average. So for everyone out there, that's a very, very good average for punting. But unfortunately, they went down against the Bills. And Michael Dixon, well, he had 4 punts for the Seattle Seahawks win over in Atlanta. And
for Jordan Mailata, that was his first taste of on-field NFL action, wasn't it?
Fantastic effort. He was in the NFL. They have like a development academy, and he's been a part of that. He is a monster. Like, he's 6'8". He's probably every bit of 140, 150 kilos. And it's just a great story. He's just really worked his backside off, and now he's become a part of the team.
And it's great to have a couple of positional players as well as punters as Australians start to spread their wings with the likes of Adam Gotsis and Jordan Mailata. And speaking of NFL and college football, don't forget our Aussies Abroad American football special coming up this week with Darren Bennett and Nathan Chapman. We delve deep into the cutthroat, high-pressure world of American football, what it takes to get there and what it takes to stay there, and what the current punting and general Australian landscape looks like over in the world of American football. So we'll also have 2 in-depth interviews with Darren Bennett and Nathan Chapman. They'll be coming soon to Aussies Abroad as well. But this week, it's our Aussies Abroad American football special. You can catch it on our YouTube channel, which you can access via Aussies Abroad TV. And, of course, wherever you get your latest podcasts, Spotify, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, it's all over the place. So just look for Aussies Abroad. So our American special coming this week. Catch it. It's fantastic.
And we're delighted to announce next week our special feature will celebrate the journey of one of my favourites in the UFC, is our very own Jake Matthews. So join us on next week's News Wrap for more info on Jake's story.
Well, that's it for this week's Aussies Abroad News Wrap. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, catch all our latest content at aussiesabroad.tv. Check us out wherever you get your latest pods. Thanks so much for your company this week. Good luck to Aussies doing amazing things all over the world. And we'll catch you next week on Aussies Abroad.